From the headquarters of FtS English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Suni Gray. Protests continue around Brazil in support of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. His supporters are hoping to press for a Supreme Court decision this week that could free him. Demonstrators are gathered outside the jail in Curitiba, where Lula is being held, to call for his release. A security perimeter has been set up around the federal police headquarters, preventing the protesters from approaching. But the former president sent a message to his supporters saying that his conscience is at peace and that he will win this fight.
I want to tell you that, as unbelievable as it may seem, my conscience is clear. I am at peace with my conscience and with my life. I doubt that Moro or Dalagnol, or the people that have said lies about me, are going to bed with the same clear conscience as me, or that they sleep as good as I sleep. It may take some time, but we will win this fight. So for now, I wish you all a good weekend, and perhaps we will be back together next week.
Our correspondent Adriana Robreño has the latest from Brasilia.
Former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva continues in jail in the federal police headquarters in Curitiba. According to a video shared by Lula's lawyer on social media, the former president is in good condition, although outraged at his arrest because he knows the judges in charge of his case have no proof to support the corruption charges brought against him. People have arrived from around the country and set up a campsite named Free Lula, just a few steps away from where the former president is being held. They were joined there by leaders of social movements and political parties. They are all resisting this arrest, as they regard it as political persecution and just a strategy to prevent Lula from running for office in October's presidential election. The demonstrators say they will continue to protest and that they won't leave the campsite until Lula is freed. Protests will also continue all around Brazil to support the former president. Orders, Lula is now considered a political prisoner.
We thank Adriana for that report. Very few news outlets in Brazil have reported on the violent actions of the police against Lula's supporters on Saturday night, just as the helicopter carrying the former president arrived in Curitiba. Telesur has obtained exclusive footage of the police in Curitiba. That's the police in Curitiba firing stun grenades, rubber bullets and tear gas at the peaceful protesters. The Workers' Party says it is planning to take legal action against the police for their actions against the protesters.
We're being attacked from both sides. The police fired a grenade into the middle of the protesters. It came from there. I was near the fence. I fell over.
The president of the Workers' Party, Gleisi Hoffmann, condemned the police suppression on Saturday night and promised that the protests would continue.
It is not acceptable that a peaceful democratic demonstration of solidarity should be broken up in that way, just as President Lula was arriving. I know they are challenging our presence here. They have complained and said we can't stay here. We were in front, then we moved here. But I want to tell you and to tell them that we are not moving from here until Lula is released.
Ocupar e resistir, ocupar e resistir, ocupar e resistir, ocupar e resistir.
On Sunday, in the Brazilian city of Curitiba, a camp was formed by social movements just a few meters away from the prison where Lula da Silva is being held prisoner. Lula Livre is the name of a small city made up of people who want Lula da Silva to be free from prison so that he could have the chance to become president once again. Leticia Maldonado, a trans militant from the landless workers movement, traveled for 5 hours to join this mobilization in Curitiba. She believes defending Lula guarantees progress for millions of Brazilians who have always been ignored by right-wing governments.
The other candidates are really cold-hearted. They have said they dislike black people, they dislike the trans community, they dislike the poor, and this is not the route Brazil must take. We want a better country, and we believe Lula can give it to us. He has done it once, and he will surely do it again.
Dozens of makeshift kitchens were set up to feed those who have joined the resistance. Niceto Alves is in charge of one of the tents, tasked with making food for the encampment. He's a farmer who tells us he is here because he wants a better life.
One of the reasons we're here is the agrarian reform. We want work and food security, and we've achieved some of that already. What you see here is all organic. It's all safe and healthy.
The camp has become a space for all ages, dialects, and races. Everyone is here with the same mission, to make Curitiba the capital of a democratic resistance.
This is
the focal point of our fight. We must mobilize, gather and resist. It's important that we have people from all over Brazil, not just from the south. We need people from the northeast, a place where most of Lula's supporters are located. Lula symbolizes the left wing. He's a symbol of resistance.
Sunday ended with a show by singer Ana Cañas, the first event at the camp. For Monday, organizers expect the arrival of new caravans of people who are coming, like everyone else, to demand Lula da Silva's freedom.
In an interview with Telesur, João Pedro Stidley, the leader of Brazil's landless workers movement, explained why the decision was taken to allow Lula to comply with the arrest warrant.
Here from Brazil, I can disclose that we have had 2 days of intense negotiations. We've had a resistance vigil with labor unions. We are very tired, but even so, we believe that we've had a victory because initially we thought that Lula should not hand himself over, since there were still other recourses to pursue in the Supreme Court in Brasilia. However, when Judge Moro perceived that our tactic was to retain Lula in a labor union and wait for 5 days, he threatened to enact preventive prison. According to Brazilian law, this would mean that Lula would be in prison for 80 days with no legal recourse. So we went back to the initial tactic and came to the conclusion that the best way to combine the resistance of the people with the legal recourse would be for Lula to hand himself under circumstances that guaranteed his dignity as president and social leader. It's not a prison, the place at the federal police. It's more like an apartment with free access to his lawyers and visitors.
Venezuela's Vice President Tarek El Assimi has met the Foreign Minister of the Netherlands, Stef Blok, to discuss normalizing relations with the islands of Aruba, Bonaire and Curaçao. Venezuela had suspended air and sea traffic with the Dutch islands earlier this year because of the smuggling of key commodities like copper was damaging to Venezuela's economy. The two men discussed how to restore normal trade links, including tourism and energy, and they agreed to keep communications open in a climate of respect. And on Sunday, the Venezuelan Foreign Minister, Jorge Arias, met the Iranian Deputy Education Minister, Kazem Sahidpour, to strengthen cooperation in research. Arias visited the Cultural Diversity and Human Rights Center of the Non-Aligned Movement, which is based in the Iranian capital of Tehran. Arias spoke about respect for people's rights and said the great global powers are trying to control the world by imposing their criteria on this issue. We're going to take a short break, but join us again after a look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. 10 members of the National Liberation Army, the ELN, have been arrested in different parts of Colombia. On Sunday, the prosecutor's office said that one of those arrested was the head of the Urban Front, Claudia Patricia Rodriguez Moreno. She is accused of laundering money for the guerrilla group. Meanwhile, peace talks between the ELN and the Colombian government continue in Quito. And social movements are gathering in Bogota to pay tribute to the victims of the armed conflict between the Colombian government and guerrilla groups. The commemoration happens every year on April 9th. This year, the activity is focusing on the financial compensation and support given to the families of the victim. So far, only 800,000 out of 9 million people affected by the conflict have been compensated. Social groups are asking the Colombian government to draw up a compensation plan with a specific budget for the victims. Also in Colombia, the Truth Commission will ask the prosecutor's office to declare the assassination of the liberal leader, Jorge Eliezer Gaitan, a crime against humanity. Gaitan's murder still remains unclear 70 years after his death. The charismatic leader fought all his life against an oligarchy of Liberal Party and Conservative Party leaders, and campaigned for the inclusion of minorities in political life. An event led by the president of the Truth Commission has been organized by the University of Bogota to pay respect to Gaitan. Delegations have been arriving in Peru to take part in the Alternative Peoples Summit that will take place alongside the 8th Summit of the Americas. Our correspondent, Alian Fernandez, has more from Lima.
Hola, buenos días. Un gusto saludar.
Peru continues to prepare for the upcoming 8th Summit of the Americas set to take place on the 13th and 14th of April. Today, representatives and youth that came from Cuba are visiting the Universidad Nacional Mayor de San Marcos, the most important university in the country and the first one in the Americas. Students have been also protesting outside this university, demanding the Peruvian government provide free and quality education. On Thursday, the meetings among social organizations from Cuba will begin. The meetings are expected to see a big debate as delegates from movements that want a change of government in Cuba were also invited. We will keep you informed as events unfold.
Ahead of the Americas Summit, LGBTI groups say they are concerned about the rights of trans participants at the meeting. It seems that the summit's identification bans do not respect transgender identity. LGBTI Coalition Group, which works with the Organization of American States, sent a letter to Peru's Foreign Ministry asking for trans rights to be respected. They also accused the summit organizers of using trans people's passport names without considering the person's gender change or of putting their names in quotation marks. They are demanding increased security measures to prevent transphobic aggression during the summit. Plans are in motion in the United States to send troops to the border with Mexico. The Texas National Guard announced that it will send 250 troops to the border, along with ground surveillance vehicles, drones, and helicopters. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey says he will send 150 personnel next week. The Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, signed an order for up to 4,000 National Guard personnel to be deployed by the end of September. A migrant caravan traveling through Central America and Mexico headed to the U.S. border has arrived in Mexico City.
After 15 days of traveling in the south of Mexico, members of the so-called migrant Via Crucis have arrived to the Mexican capital. Among them, Christian David, who left his native Honduras when he was only 17 to find a better job that would allow him to pay for his university fees.
I want to study medicine to help the poor people who, like me, need a doctor but don't have the financial resources to pay for one.
Some 150 undocumented migrants mobilized towards the monument of the Ángel de la Independencia in Mexico City before moving to the embassy of the United States.
I am risking my life and my son's life, but there are stronger things that forced me to leave my country.
Getting here has cost me so much. We have walked, or migrating is the only way out. The way is long, but thank God we are here.
Once at the U.S. Embassy, The migrants specifically protested against U.S. President Donald Trump and the sending of National Guard troops to the border with Mexico.
Someone please give Trump a map. This caravan ends in California, and in California he hasn't sent anyone. He has placed troops in Arizona, in other places. It seems like the most powerful president in the world doesn't really know what he is doing.
Despite Trump's threats, the migrants say they won't stop their journey. They will continue, even if their path is still very long and hard, and even if it will get harder once they cross the U.S. border.
Latin America and the Caribbean has become the only region in the world where child marriages have not decreased significantly over the past decade. This is according to a recent report by the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF. Maria Cristina Percival, the head of UNICEF for Latin America and the Caribbean, said that 1 out of 4 women are being married before they turn 18. Percival added that this increases the risk of sexual violence, early pregnancies, school dropouts, and social inclusion. At least 20 million girls from the region will be married before their 18th birthday by 2013. And only 5 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean have banned child marriage. They are Honduras, El Salvador, the Dominican Republic, Guatemala, and Trinidad and Tobago. The Bolivian president, Evo Morales, has opened a solar energy plant in the department of Tarija to increase electricity production in the country. Morales said the plant will produce 5 megawatts of energy for the nearby communities. $10.4 million were invested in the project. According to the president, Morales said the project was made possible by the support of a Spanish company which trained Bolivian workers in the installation of solar panels. The 4th edition of the Puertas Abiertas Artist Meeting was held at the Ruben Dario National Theatre in Managua, in Nicaragua. This project promotes the work of young artists and the cultural exchange between participants.
From early in the morning, young artists like Damiana took part in the event. She is a Nicaraguan painter who says is inspired by nature.
This is meant to promote art in Nicaragua. It's very important. We're organizing more and more events that showcase live painting.
Sculptors were also welcome to the meeting. Francisco's piece is a shoe which he says represents all the roads still left to be explored.
This is an extremely productive space. It holds meaning for Nicaraguan culture and for youth culture. This is a great opportunity that the theater's administration and the government have given us.
Puertas Abiertas, which means open doors in English, is a space for upcoming painters. They are taking over from a great generation of painters and making themselves known in a free and open space.
One of our goals is to expand this idea through all of Central America, as long as it remains an open space for all artists.
Puertas Abiertas got its start with only 12 painters, but organizers say that it has grown each year with over 150 artists participating during this year's edition.
We're going to take a short break, but join us again after a look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The Syrian military says it has shot down several missiles launched by Israeli forces on the T4 airport in the city of Homs. A number of people were reportedly killed in the missile attack. The strike comes hours after an alleged chemical attack killed nearly 70 people in the rebel-held town of Douma. U.S. President Donald Trump accuses Syrian forces of the chemical attack, but Russia has said those allegations are false and are a provocation.
The airstrike must be investigated. Of course, this is a very dangerous development. I hope that at the very least, this is understood by military personnel, both American and those who are in the coalition with them.
In Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban achieved an overwhelming victory in Sunday's parliamentary elections. His right-wing party FtS won almost 49% of the vote. It may even be on track to win the coveted two-thirds supermajority in Parliament. Orban's victory worries the European Union as it shows the continuing strengthening of the far-right nationalist projects.
I can tell you, dear friends, that it was a big battle, and we have gained a decisive victory. We have got the opportunity. We created the opportunity for ourselves to defend our country.
And many people in Budapest are also worried about Orban's victory. The results show that the right-wing prime minister won most of his support from small towns and villages, but not in the capital city.
Those who keep hanging on to the way they got used to are afraid of change, and they are afraid to start something new by voting for a different party than Fidesz.
Well, the government has successfully implemented its hate campaign. They planted hatred in people's hearts, which is very sad.
Rail workers in France are backed with their nationwide strikes. Here's more on that and other news making headlines around the world.
Another wave of transport strikes has begun in France as train workers protest against President Emmanuel Macron's economic reforms. Last week, train staff launched a 3-month nationwide rolling strikes in a dispute over the government's planned overhaul of state-run railway SNCF. Many French people support the cause, but the continuous strike has led to chaos for public transport commuters.
They have the right to strike, it's understandable, but what about those who pay every day and every month for their trains to go to work? For example, I am paid by the hour, and if I lose 1 or 2 hours, then I lose money. It's not the SNCF who will pay for the loss, is it?
People across Canada have been mourning the death of 15 people, majority of them part of Hamburg Broncos junior ice hockey team. Most of the victims were between 16 to 21 years old. The accident happened on Friday when the bus carrying the team collided with a truck in the town of Nipawin. 14 others traveling in the bus were severely injured. Armen Sarkisian has been sworn in as Armenia's 4th president. It is the first time that Armenia chooses a president not by way of nationwide elections but by voting in the National Assembly. This represents a shift towards a parliamentary form of government. The 64-year-old Sarkisian was Prime Minister of Armenia from 1996 to 1997 as well as ambassador to the United Kingdom.
Hundreds of international runners have competed in a marathon hosted by North Korea in Pyongyang. The annual competition is held to mark the anniversary of the birth of the country's founder, Kim Il-sung. This year, the number of international participants dropped by half, with only 400 foreigners competing. A ban on U.S. citizens visiting North Korea is one of the reasons for the lower participation. In the last few years, tourism has increased in the country because of fears of an armed conflict on the Korean peninsula. But recent moves by the USA and North Korea to calm relations have given new hope to tourists interested in visiting the country. And that story brings us to the end of this newscast. But for these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Moves.